Welcome. My name is Wendy Hall, and it is my honour to facilitate our 2022 SheSails Conference, our second ever conference, Steering the Course. We all have connection to country, and I'd like to acknowledge and appreciate people's times. I appreciate being in this place, and I acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today, and pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. I appreciate where it is that you are from, your traditional ancestors, and that allows us all to connect here today. And what a wonderful opportunity it is to come together on this really auspicious week. It is the week of World Sailing, Women's Sailing Festival. So around the world, many people will be celebrating. World Sailing have called this the year of steering the course, and you will certainly hear the most amazing stories of ladies, personally, professionally, and teams that are steering their own course. It's a privilege to spend the next 90 minutes with you. Over 360 like-minded, passionate females and supporters of women sailing from across Australia and New Zealand have come together tonight. The opportunity to hear from stories from near and far, from ocean adventures to coastal racing, from regattas in New Zealand to Queenscilff in Victoria, to landlocked Jindabyne. Tonight you will hear stories, journeys, and programs that show our passion, our joy, and our energy for sailing. Some are personal stories, and some speak to our teamwork and to our community. One thing we all have in common, though, is that you will hear stories that speak of resilience, of challenge, of teamwork, and harnessing the power of females, of women in sailing. My hope is that you will be inspired. I hope you will be motivated by what you hear tonight. My wish is that you will come away wondering what you can do to steer the course for yourself and for others. So please do sit back and prepare to be amazed by the stories that you will hear. Sarah, over to you for lines off.
Thank you, Wendy. Hello, everyone, and a really very warm welcome, and thank you to you all for joining us this evening. Thank you to our presenters, our guests, and our clubs in joining the Australian Sailing SheSails Conference of 2022. My name is Sarah Ogilvie, and presently I'm the Head of Sport Development and Growth for Australian Sailing. To date, I've enjoyed many roles in our sport over many decades, and from learning to sail in junior sail training programs to joining the Australian sailing team, where I competed in 2 Olympic Games, finishing 4th in both. I've had many opportunities to compete in World Championships, and I've also coached, and still to this day, coach sailors of all ages, from our juniors right through to our masters sailors. Many of my roles have been voluntary, and particularly have been in supporting women and girls to step onto boats or become active on the water. And with these programs, I've designed and implemented many events for women and girls, and this is still very much a passion of mine. Tonight, though, I really am looking forward to listening and learning from the stories of the guests tonight, and of the clubs, and of the people within. I'm really looking forward to hearing about their journeys and the roles that they're all playing, to inspire and encourage and develop others to enjoy the many offerings that we all here enjoy about being on the water. So again, a very, very warm welcome to you all. I would like to now hand over to Australian Sailing Vice President Alistair Murray to open the conference and share on the goals we have for sailing. Thanks, Alistair.
Thanks very much, Sarah, and it's great to be here. I'm thrilled to be able to dial in actually from Phuket, where I'm on holidays, to participate in this very important SheSails Steering the Course Leadership Conference. The Australian Sailing President Daniel Belcher and the CEO Ben Houston both apologised for not being able to attend today, but they both asked me to convey how strongly they support SheSails and female participation generally. Personally, when I started sailing, which was a very long time ago, it was a sport pretty much for the boys, and I really raced against other boys, and it was a very disappointing aspect of our sport at that time. But it's changed, and it is changing. And I've been thrilled, over the years, particularly as a father of 3 girls and a grandfather of 1 girl, to see female participation grow so much. With what I see to be, for example, 50-50 participation in junior programs in general. There's as many girls as there are boys now. And for the first time ever in the upcoming Paris Olympics in 2 years, total gender equity across all of the sailing classes. First time we've seen that. But our Australian sailing census figures show female participation to be only 30%. Now, that's a hell of a lot better than it was, but it's still 30%. And I'm sure we all see still some ongoing blokey attitudes and a blokey culture to some degree still when we're out and about around the clubs. But a lot of progress has been made, but we've got some ground to make up as well. So under the GROW pillar, one of the 3 major pillars of our strategic plan, we embrace all forms of diversity, and one of them is gender diversity. And we've set a female participation target of 50% by 2032. So I say, let's go for it. It's a stretch goal, but there's no reason why we can't do it. Personally, I'm very proud of many aspects of Australian sailing, and just a couple that I'll mention to you. We have true gender equity on our board, on the Australian Sailing Board. When Daniel Belcher steps down in 2 weeks at the end of his term, we will have 4 male and 4 female board members. And if a female is elected to the board on the 20th of October, which is the election date, it will be the first time ever we've had more than 50% female participation on our board. That would be fantastic. And the other little point I wanted to make was that 5 of our 7 state and territory general managers are female. 5 out of 7. So the sport is being largely delivered by female management across Australia. So onward and upward. Congratulations to all involved in today's webinar. I'm very much looking forward to hearing about it. I'm looking forward to participating, including hearing from my friend Jessica Watson and all of the other presenters that you'll be hearing from today. It's going to be a tremendous hour and a half. So cheers. I'd like to declare this conference open on behalf of Australian Sailing and the board, and I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be great. Back to you, Wendy. Thank you.
Alistair, thank you. Wonderful. You spoke so beautifully to what Australian Sailing is doing as an organisation. And we are certainly steering the course inside the organisation around participation, setting that 50% female participation and gender equity by 2032. We've had a bumper year inside Australian Sailing with a women's leadership program, the building of our gender equity diversity plan, the policy that's in formation at the moment, and we're really seeing it come to fruition. You will start to see more and more come from Australian Sailing over the coming months. And sailing is a great way to show how diverse and inclusive we can be as a nation as well. We are looking to create inclusive communities, and sailing certainly has got a part to play. We're very much hoping that what comes from Australian Sailing over the next few years and up to 2032 supports the inclusive and integrated sailing community. It really welcomes and develops those strong networks. So in the coming years, you'll see guidance and resources and support to continue to build our strengths in those areas and tackle the barriers. Our first guest needs no introduction. She has set sail from many, many ports, and she certainly set sail for our Steering the Course conference. She's been a role model for many, many female sailors. She's a household name that is synonymous with courage and resilience and competence. She's achieved much in her sailing career. She's done the most incredible adventures, the youngest sailor to sail solo non-stop around the world at 16. She's authored a book called True Spirit, all about that adventure. But did you know that she's named the Young Australian of the Year in 2011? And did you know that she's gone on to lead various projects, including a team with the youngest team to sail the Sydney Hobart? She has an MBA, an OAM, and is the youth representative for the United Nations World Food Programme. To introduce her well as the SheSails ambassador, encourage women and girls to explore what their local clubs have to offer, we have a video to show you. Do enjoy.
Let's go. No hesitating. We gotta move, we gotta shake, we gotta get up on our feet and liberate it. You feel like something's out of control. Your mind says yes and your body says oh. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go.
Discover what your local club has to offer.
Welcome, Jess.
Thank
Oh,
you.
here she is. What an
Thank you very
amazing
much.
adventure. Every time I watch that video, I'm just like, wow, being on the water is such a cool thing to do. Would love to chat with you over the next 10 to 15 minutes about your adventure, about your journey. So take it away.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much for that generous introduction and for having me join the session this evening. I actually want to start with a quick video that's going to throw us right back to that day over 12 years ago now, when my little boat, Alice Pink Lady, and I sailed back into Sydney Harbour. So I'll let that video play.
I'm completely overwhelmed. I just don't know what to think and what to say at the moment. So it's all a bit much, but absolutely amazing.
Jessica Watson will set foot on a firm ground, although I have to say the pontoon on the man of war steps can be a little bumpy at times, so she'll be at home at first. Here we go.
Oh, that hug from mum and dad. There's still a lot of that emotion from that day that's still with me a little bit today. Incredibly special and very, very overwhelming. But what I want to talk about is how it was possible, how that extraordinary day and the whole voyage actually came about. And the first thing that I have to talk about when I talk about what made it possible is this extraordinary team. And I appreciate there's a real irony in this, right? It was a solo voyage. It couldn't have been more physically alone. And yet there was actually this extraordinary team of people, a very large team of people behind it right from the get-go. In the early days, trying to find that support was pretty daunting. So I decided as 11-year-old that I wanted to do this, and then started talking about it as a 12 and 13-year-old. I was pretty nervous. I'd be sort of saying, oh, I'd like to, maybe, I've got this dream. I never actually thought those things, this, crazy teenage audaciousness where I was committed fully. This was always going to happen one way or another for me. But I was going around saying, maybe, I'd like to, this dream. And it wasn't until I started saying, I'm going to do this, this is happening, that I actually started getting taken more seriously and people started supporting this crazy dream. In the early days, it was a case of reaching out to anyone and everyone, asking for advice and guidance. Not everyone responded. In fact, probably the majority didn't, which is totally fair enough. But a huge amount of people did. And some of those people who I initially just reached out to for some advice and guidance, what would you do? How would you do things differently if you were doing something like this? They led to some pretty extraordinary things. Don McIntyre, one of those people I reached out to for advice initially, actually ended up buying Alice Pink Lady for me, which was huge because once I had the boat, people started to take me a lot more seriously. So it was almost a sort of snowballing effect with support. Once you've got a few amazing sponsors, a few more started taking me a lot more seriously as well. And that was pretty critical because, I was washing dishes in my spare time in between a little bit of schoolwork and all the training and the time on the water I can get. So I pretty quickly worked out I wasn't going to be able to afford to sail around the world till I was something like 40 years old. And that clearly wasn't going to break the age record that I was aiming to. So I had an incredible amount of sponsorship and wonderful supporters. But when it came to do the physical work to Pink Lady, we still needed more help. So we actually put an ad in a boating magazine asking for help. And I was, that fear we sort of have about asking for help, I was a bit nervous about this, and was pretty skeptical that anyone would respond. And then proceeded to be completely blown away when people from around the country and in fact around the world responded and flew themselves to this dusty shed on the Sunshine Coast where we were getting Alice Pink Lady ready and worked sun up to sundown for months on end. All the thanks they were getting was some sort of dodgy sandwiches at lunchtime and more hard work. Pretty extraordinary group of people, but the most important thing about that group of people was they brought their own sailing experiences and adventure experiences with them. So real range of people. There was experienced adventurers and kind of professional sailors, and there was even one poor young guy who I think got sent along because his parents wanted him out of the house. And that meant at times there was some really clashing, conflicting perspectives and advice that was given. And that could be pretty intense to navigate, but ultimately led to a really, really well set up boat. After all of that hard work, all those years of planning and preparation, I don't know if anyone remembers what happened next. I'm hoping there's a few young people listening that didn't, or enough people who have hopefully forgotten, because it was pretty embarrassing. Long story short, first night out to sea, after all this preparation, after quite a lot of media build-up and attention, I ran smack bang into the middle of a 63,000-ton ship. Probably don't need to tell you how bad it was, how terrifying, how much damage there was, and perhaps worst of all, coming back into port the next day, limping back into port to face what was described as this scrum of media, this sea of cameras and reporters all demanding to know, what I'd done and who I thought I was that I could set off on this voyage when this is what I'd gone and done on my very first night at sea. Can understand where they were coming from. There's absolutely no denying that I'd completely stuffed up. It doesn't get much worse than that in terms of a mistake that you could make. But I look back at that and go, gosh, it happened for a reason. I mean, firstly, quite obviously, learn from it. Don't hit ships. Pretty simple, that one. Also had the opportunity, of course, to improve the systems on board that should have told me there was a ship nearby. But most significantly, and this perhaps sounds a little bit strange, I walked away from that incident with more confidence. Right as the rest of the world had way less confidence in me, fair enough, I walked away with the last piece of confidence I needed, because even though I'd royally stuffed up, I had the opportunity to completely put myself to the test. And in the moment, my head did exactly what it needed to do. I kind of went into the checklist modes, pulled myself together and got back to port that next day. And for me, that actually put to bed that kind of little fear that I still had in my own head about whether or not I was going to hold together in the very worst moments. Because I did used to be the first person to fall apart when things got a bit rough. When I first started sailing, I was that scared, timid one who didn't like the windy days. So for me, I still had that in the back of my head, and I needed to sort of prove to myself that I was going to be capable of this. So finally getting out onto the ocean, the voyage itself. Well, there was a lot of really beautiful moments. Dolphins as far as the eye can see, you know, that iconic outline of Cape Horn, rounding that, just seeing it through the clouds and the circling albatross. Stars reflected so perfectly in the water one night when the ocean was so still that you sort of couldn't tell where the sky stopped and where the water began. But I never got bored of just watching the boat sail along, you know, dance along through the waves, and never ever bored of just that simple thing. You know, people ask you, what's your favorite moment? What's the best bit? And I think it's really just that. Never bored of it in the slightest. And that's a damn good thing too, because there was plenty of empty ocean out there. So when you sail around the world non-stop, that means seeing land only a handful of times and seeing an extraordinary amount of that empty ocean, those empty horizons. I only actually saw a handful of aircrafts and other boats, and actually never was able to see another person for those entire 210 long days. So incredibly physically remote. And people often pull me up when they hear me talk about that part of the voyage and how remote it was, when I say we, and they say, why are you saying we? Talking about this solo voyage. And I do say we for a couple of reasons. And firstly, that's my gorgeous little boat. That's how I kind of thought of us. But I was also saying we in reference to that team of people, because by the time I set off, even though they physically couldn't be further away, they just felt so much part of it. What I had to learn to do mentally out in the middle of those big oceans was to break them down. Sometimes you're having a bad day, it's cold, it's wet, it's miserable, boat's going slow, and I'm talking 4 knots is good speed on an S&S 34. So those bad days happened. They happened plenty. And what I learned to do was, when they came along, to break those oceans down, instead of, you know, thinking about that whole next ocean to cross or that whole world, which you can take on a good day. I learned instead just to focus on the next milestone, or on the really bad days, just those next few nautical miles in front of us. Of course, there was also some really nasty weather, as you'd expect. The worst night, 4 knockdowns, and that really put the boat to the test. You know, we're talking boat being rolled upside down and then slammed or thrown into the trough of the next wave. It was a huge testament to Pink Lady and the way she'd been prepared, that she actually came out of the worst of those knockdowns with very little damage. There was some, you know, tears to the sails, some other equipment, everything was thrown around down below, of course, and actually a solar panel that was bent inwards from where we'd been thrown upside down into that trough of the wave. But incredibly, nothing critical, nothing that was, you know, show ending. And that, when I look back, was really a testament to that incredible team of people and the very different perspectives that they brought to that team. It was pretty intense to navigate, you know, when someone's telling you, this is what you're going to do, this is how we've got to prepare, this is the brand of equipment we've got to use. But I realise now that it was because we had all of that and we had those debates that we were able to make the right decisions. And I think it's pretty incredible to actually be able to say that in terms of sort of boat and equipment, there's very, very little I'd do differently if I had the chance again. Certainly didn't step off Pink Lady and have enough of sailing. In fact, I think it was the exact opposite. It went on quite quickly to pull together this incredible team, the youngest ever team to compete in the Rolex Sydney Hobart Yacht Race. And we took that campaign pretty seriously. We knew we were up against, you know, age and experience. And this was in a Sydney 38. So at the time, quite a competitive class racing division. And we sailed hard for the year and trained full time for 3 months, including a full practice run down to Hobart. So we're pretty proud to come away with a 2nd place there. I think in the years since, I've taken sailing less and less seriously. I've also come to enjoy it more and more, and perhaps become more and more passionate about it. Probably fair to say that performance sailing isn't really my forte. You know, sailing around at 4 knots is kind of more my style. And I think increasingly I've just become something that's a passion for life, and, you know, messing about in boats, playing boats, is really more and more what I love about sailing. And some of those lessons, the things that got me around the world, are so relevant in all walks of life for me these days, whether it's sailing or not sailing and any other challenges. You know, that ability to kind of have the courage to say, this is what I'm doing, this is the support I need, and to draw on a range of experiences and perspectives. And then when the going gets tough and you've got a whole ocean ahead of you, to really break it down and give yourself some easier, more manageable milestones.
Jess, what I hear your story and I'm just blown away by it. Absolutely. And so much comes to mind around resilience and the strategies that you use that are everyday tools that we use. You used on the boat. So breaking that down into chunks absolutely is one of those great strategies. I'd love to hear what else kept you strong? What else kept you moving forward?
Oh, there's plenty. You know, again, that not feeling lonely, because I physically was very, very remote. In fact, we sailed through Point Nemo, which is the furthest point anywhere from land on Christmas Eve. So, you know, it doesn't get more extreme than that in terms of physical remoteness, but it just didn't feel that way. It just felt so much a collective thing. So that absolutely helped. And then, of course, I was writing along the way. So blogging, and one of my sponsors was actually the publisher. So they, of course, expected a book by the end of the voyage. And that was incredible. And I think was probably one of the things that helped the most, because it meant that I was constantly framing the experience in terms of how am I going to explain how I survived this. So that really gives you an awesome kind of framing and way to think in the moment, that I suppose I was kind of writing my way through it a little bit along the way as well.
Yeah, and true spirit is a beautiful reflection. So I can understand that would have given you, an opportunity to really look at what you were achieving day on day, week on week. I'm just going to open up, if I may. We have Q&A options for our audience. So feel free to pop a question that you have for Jess in the Q&A. While we're doing that, Jess, can I ask you a question? You are so massively inspirational for so many female sailors, young and old. And we look at what you've achieved and we know that we can do a small part of that. Who inspires you, though?
Oh, wow. There's so many. There really, really is. You know, so many of, I suppose the sailors that originally inspired me, you know, were sort of people who've done similar things in terms of Jessie Martin and Kay Cotty.
Yes.
And then I look at people like Sam Davies and, you know, Alan MacArthur. Like, there's such a long list. But every time I go down to a yacht club, you get blown away, inspired by everyone you meet and and all the wonderful female sailors and beyond. I think that's one of the other things about me and sailing these days is I'm just such a big sailing fan. I just have so much respect for our performance sailors and our ocean races, because I suppose I've seen enough to know how tough it is and how damn cool it is what they do.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and then all the volunteers and the people who just do so much, far more than I do for the sport, and I'm so grateful for that. And
Yeah, wonderful. Got a quick question about your movie that's coming out, True Spirit. How are you feeling about that? When will we get to see it?
Yeah, that soon, a couple of months. We've finally got some dates locked in that'll be announced really soon. So it's been a long time coming. It was all shot last year, and yeah, it's pretty weird, to be honest. I mean, very weird. I kind of refer to the actress who plays me as fake me, which I hope that's okay with her. But it's quite lovely because it is based on the book, but it's also its own thing. It's the director and everyone has kind of brought something else special to it. And I hope that it does the right thing by sailing, because it's obviously largely about that, but sort of also its own story.
Terrific. I have to say, I'm really looking forward to seeing it. We have so many movies out there that don't end well. Yours is a beautiful one that shows us how well it can end, which is terrific. I've got one question before we go around the grounds. So from the audience, how would you describe your relationship with the ocean?
Yeah, it's something pretty special. I mean, you know, maybe this is kind of where the crazy solo sailor part kind of comes out a little bit, but it's very special. Like it's, I struggle to go a day without being near the water, and it's the first thing you sort of do when you go somewhere new. You go find that place to ground yourself. I'm sure there's loads of people who can kind of relate to that, and you know that calming effect that it has. And
Very true.
I think maybe how grumpy I get when I don't get out sailing for a few weeks probably says it all. But it's just, I don't know if we realize how lucky we are, because we probably do take it for granted a little bit, but how lucky we are as sailors to have that time in that sort of special place where you often, you know, can't do anything but just focus on wind and waves, and how healthy that is.
Well, I can totally understand that. Thank you, Jess. I am so looking forward to seeing what's next for you as the SheSails ambassador, what's next for you in your exciting career. And I'm very much looking forward to watching the movie. So thank you very much. Now we go from oceans to the mountains and back to the coast on both sides of the Tasman. We've just heard about Jess's Pink Ladies, so we're going to now talk dinghies and keelboats. We'll now hear inspirational SheSails stories from around the club. And we're going to start in a really unusual place. Our start line is on landlocked Lake Jindabyne, where we get to meet three extraordinary young ladies. We get to meet Freya, Alexi, and Lucy. Welcome.
Thank you
Here
very
they
much.
are. Thank you so much for your time today. I know you're in the middle of a really heavy study period, being your final year. So taking time out to be with us, we are so grateful. You have done incredible things. You've increased female membership by 100% in your club, and your youth membership by 20% for females. And you've all done it not by new initiatives, not by major projects, by changing mindsets and culture. So this fascinates me, how you've done this. So Lucy, may I start with you, please? Tell us, how did this all come about?
Well, all three of us have grown up sailing with our fathers and have just loved it. But we decided, like, it was a sport that we really loved, but we wanted our voice to be heard. And this became really noticeable when we went to an Australian sailing conference in Sydney, where one of the presenters was the youngest member to be a Commodore of the club. And this was really inspiring, because we were like, wow, why is this something that we're even talking about in the first place? So then we went back to our club and had discussions about, well, how can we install this youth voice into our own club? And we decided that we would form a youth committee where we all had similar roles to that on the main committee, so where we could learn the roles and just have our voice. And it's been a real huge success. We've had so much more inclusivity from the youth. We've got youth programs up and running. We are the main instructors now at the sailing club. We make fundraising events,
cool.
And yeah, it's just kind
beautiful.
Of
and I think you've got now female time on boats, so they get to learn in that really safe environment and creating those connections. Lucy, I love how this all came about. Something that you were passionate about, you got exposed to, and you brought it back. So Lexi, we love that this is about changing mindsets and changing attitudes and changing cultures. How did you harness the power of youth? I'm really curious.
Well, our youth committee and our club is all about inclusivity, where we try and make sure that everyone from all ages are welcome. We've made some small changes in our community club to make this come through. For example, having non-alcoholic prizes. And also recently we had Freya design a t-shirt, which if you can see.
Oh, that's fabulous.
So it has a an Opti catamaran and a single motorhole on it, so that it's just, I think that really speaks to our aim of inclusivity as a club and trying to really bring the youth together. We always try and not treat the youth in our club like they are little kids. We always try and make sure that they are, like, their voices are really heard. We talk to them and like, oh my gosh, that tack was amazing. Like, now you're sailing better than I am. And I think like it's really awesome for them to have us to look up to, because they can see, oh, they're a youth and they're a women pretty much running this club. So it gives them hope to do it in the future. And like the ability to, even with both, it also was a real big place in our SheSails program, where because of our youth, we're able to be in the boats with them. And that just made them feel a lot more confident in their ability, because we were there, we were asking questions, we were in the scene with them. And that was one of the real ways that we could harness our ability and share the love.
I love that. I think that's absolutely terrific. So, Lexi, if I can stay with you, there's been some personal growth for you around your sailing, I understand.
Yeah, I think having the youth committee and this voice and this community within the club has done a lot more than just like my confidence in sailing has definitely dramatically increased, but also confidence within myself has very much increased. Like, I feel I was always used to be a very, very shy person who didn't really like engaging in a lot of conversations. But now I like this, through this opportunity, I'm like so happy to just come up and like speak to anyone. I feel really confident in my voice because of the opportunities that is given me and has given the other people in my community. So I think that personal growth has been really amazing.
Yeah, that's really evident. I'm watching you and how beautifully articulate you are. Freya, I'm curious, if I'm at my club, how do I start this? What are the things that I need to do to create that cultural change or that change in mindset?
So in our opinion, we believe there are 3 key things that our club's done and that would be great for other clubs to imitate. The first thing that we've aimed to create is as much of a supportive environment as we can. So this is both during our courses. We created a supportive environment and companionship environment through bringing morning tea and afternoon tea and having casual discussions where it's not just instructor and participant relationships, we're more friends and we're working together and having casual discussions as well. But we've also, with this supportive environment, we're trying to give ongoing support to our SheSails groups. So rather than just running a course and letting them on their way, we were the first club in Australia to integrate adults into our Green Fleet program. So the SheSails group will come along each Green Fleet and we can give them ongoing support and keep helping to instruct them with their learning. And also the final thing we do is we have aims to integrate them into our racing as well. So on Wednesday nights, they would come along and they'd sail around with us and they'd have a radio with them so that if they got into any trouble during our racing time, the rescue boat would be out there and could go and assist them.
That's absolutely terrific. Oh, please keep going.
Next thing we aimed to do was we aimed to be facilitators rather than lecturers in our courses. So we aimed to be more of a companionship, as I said before, and to guide their learning rather than lecture them on exactly how to complete everything. And we found that the females in our courses really responded very well to that. And particularly as we are youth, they respond a lot better to guidance rather than being told what to do. And so we found that it just opens up the relationship a lot more and they end up retaining a lot more information.
Yeah, no, you look, all three of you, amazing ladies. What an inspiration you are. I'm blown away by what you've achieved, your capacity and your capability. Good luck with your HSC. Good luck with the rest of the year. And please keep building that amazing community of sailors and harnessing the power of youth. And thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
My
Thank
absolute pleasure. We now cruise across the Tasman. We're heading to Auckland. And when I look back on my sailing, there are certainly moments that I will remember forever. There are events that you attend that are just life-changing. Over the next 10 minutes is one of those moments for many, many girls and female volunteers. Nothing epitomizes fun and friendship and challenge like a regatta. This is where competition really meets fun and festivities. So we welcome Bronwynne from Auckland in New Zealand.
Good evening, and thank you, Wendy, for very much for the opportunity to talk about our Predict Wind Girls Regatta that we hold here in Auckland. It's really nice to be talking about a New Zealand initiative for an Australian audience, which I think we have some New Zealanders on as well. So the Predict Wind Girls Regatta is an event which Kohimarama Yacht Club is really proud to host. It first started out what we believe is over 30 years ago, and we've now grown this to be a 2-day regatta attracting over 150 girls from around the country, all sailing abilities, aged anywhere between about 8 and 18 to 20. And this year we had at least 8 different classes of boats. So it was a fantastic weekend. But instead of me talking for the next little while, I thought I'd show you this video of our regatta that was created by Sport New Zealand and Yachting New Zealand. And I think it really shows you the essence of our Girls Regatta.
Fantastic. Let's watch.
Hi, I'm Jess and I'm here to tell you about the Girls Regatta at Kohimarama Yacht Club. My dad encouraged me into sailing from when I was a really young age, and I started learning to sail at the age of 8, and I've just done it ever since and loved it. I love the atmosphere and how it's all girls, so I get to compete against only girls and I get to see all my friends, and everyone's just so much more confident here.
Only 30% of participants in sailing are female. And like with most sports, many drop out in their teenage years. And so Yachting New Zealand saw that something needed to be done. So we've developed and implementing our Women and Girls in Sailing strategy and have employed a women's sailing manager to oversee the work being done in that area, which include things like our women's forums, networks, and our coach and sailor mentorship programs. Yachting New Zealand has a philosophy that sailing is a sport for life. And we see it's really important our young women see opportunities within our sport, both on and off the water, in areas like high performance, our marine industry, major events and technology. This event in particular is really important for our team to be a part of. It's great for the girls to see their sailing pathways in front of them, as well as a chance for them to see female leadership in action with the race management teams on the water and the regatta organisation. We hope to see greater retention through initiatives and events like this.
So the Kohi Girls Regatta has been running for over 30 years now, and it started out with just recognising a few girls out there on the race course, and it's grown over all of those years, and now we're sitting here at over 130 girls coming from all around the country and a 2-day regatta. So the really important thing for us is that the girls make good friends off the water, they have a lot of fun, and they have some great competition on the water, because that's what keeps girls in sailing.
So I think the Girls Regatta was the first event I actually ever did. It was pretty daunting, you know, coming into a big fleet, but the fact that it was all girls was just a little less sort of terrifying for my first event. But I did this event every year. It was one of my favourite regattas, and the girls I did it with, you know, I grew up with, and I still catch up with a lot of them now. I ended up sailing at the Olympics with one of those girls. I think it's such an amazing event. You know, it's friendships for life. That's what sport's about.
I think think that girls, sometimes they feel a bit less confident when boys are around and stuff. So they need to be with a group of girls to keep them encouraged and keep them going.
It's just about finding ways to recognise their girls in sailing. I mean, sailing's a sport where the girls compete exactly the same as the boys, especially when they're younger. And so it's about finding ways, and it could be as simple as recognising them after racing to go first, second, third girl, first, second, third boy, so that, you know, they're up there on the podium next to those boys. It could be a training session just for girls. It could be bringing in some older female sailors to come and talk to them. Or, if you wanted, you could start a regatta just like this one.
My gosh, lifelong friends. I can really attest to that. Just incredible. So what is it that makes Predict Wind Regatta so special year on year? What is it that you're seeing?
Yeah, look, I think it is truly that it is just simply girls being girls. You know, when you look at it, and it's something that came up in that video, is that sailing at a young age, girls compete on a completely level playing field to boys, but it's not actually a level playing field. You know, girls when they're 12 are often taller, heavier than their male counterparts. And then when they're entering the youth classes, when they're sort of 15, 16, it's the opposite. And yet in those when they're younger, they're required to sail these boats that are suited to, you know, lighter kids. So this is the opportunity where girls can compete truly with their counterparts, but they can also be girls off the water. They can have fun, they can be silly without actually having sort of boys, you know, being a bit boisterous and all the rest of it. The other thing that really attracts them is the goodie bags. We do these phenomenal goodie bags, and I hate to say it, but they all come with the goodie bags.
I can understand that completely. And I am intrigued by the fact that the 2 days is as much about land as it is about being on the water, because they enjoy the land sport part as well, don't they?
Yeah, they absolutely do. And, you know, obviously what happens is we often have a very light day and a very heavy day. So the light day, they're spending a lot of time on the land waiting for that wind to come in. And so we have activities, they just get to be with each other, they get to meet new girls, they get to meet people from around the country, and then they can go to other regattas and they can see those same people, but they've made those friendships in an environment that is secure, safe, they feel confident to do it.
Oh, that is absolutely fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Bronwynne, for sharing your steering the course journey. And I have no doubts that this is a regatta that will go on for many, many more years, and you will influence and change the lives of many more young ladies. So thank you. It's 3 hours on for you, 2 hours from Sydney time. So I know, you know, the evening is coming to an end for you. So thank you, Bronwynne, so much for sharing your story with us at SheSails.
Thank you, and you're very welcome.
The rest of your evening. I love that sailing is for everyone, and you heard that from Bronwynne. It's something that we can do regardless. So I love that it doesn't matter what age you are, what stage in life you are. So now we're going to set sail for Queenscilff in Victoria, and we're going to make the boats are going to get a little bit bigger. So we're going to increase the size of the boats, and we're heading to ones with keels on it. Lee Renfree is the first female Commodore of Queenscilff Cruising Yacht Club and the Victorian Office SheSails Award winner for 2022. If that wasn't enough, she's actually also the brainchild behind Keel Boat Introduction to Sailing Savvy, lovingly known as KISS. So KISS has brought women from the galley to the helm. So I am super intrigued. Lee, welcome to SheSails Steering the Course Conference. What started all of this?
Well, thanks, Wendy. Thanks for having me, everybody. Well, my husband Stephen and I sail a 44-foot centre cockpit sloop called Pipe Dream, and we sail her tour. Sometimes it's really busy, but we do really love it. We've circumnavigated Tasmania twice on board Pipe Dream. I'm so passionate to share this feeling of freedom and joy out on the ocean. The club, QCYC, is a destination club near the entrance to Port Phillip Bay on the beautiful Bellarine Peninsula. It's on an island. It's completely surrounded by a gorgeous marine reserve. It's peaceful, and we actually call it paradise. You come in, you moor alongside on the wharf in your designated spot. It's tight. It's a bit tricky sometimes with the wind and tide working their magic against the skills of the skipper and the crew. But over the years, I've watched many a husband and wife arrive. He's screaming at her in a foreign language like, pull on the red one, love, or get the stern line on first, or we need 3 fenders over here and 2 springers. Eventually, they manage some form of control. He's red-faced, she's in tears, not paradise and not fun. And the other scenario is that she eventually goes, not doing this anymore. I'm going to be arriving in the car with all the goodies for the holiday. I'm going to use the boat as a caravan. And at the end of the holiday, I'm driving home. So when I became the first female Commodore, I thought, oh, I've got a job to do here. I've got to make it better for females at our club. I've got to give them some knowledge. I've got to empower them. And I really wanted to make it possible for them to enjoy their time on the water, get the most out of it, learn some new skills, and really take control if things went south. And it was about sharing the passion. And I thought, how am I going to do that? So I thought about setting up a program. I recruited a whole bunch of incredible people that I have to say thank you to. And then I went to our committee and they said, yes, do it. So we had to do it.
And Kiss was born.
Kiss was born. Yes.
Was born.
Yeah.
So tell me what you do. What's involved in the program?
Well, how it all started really was we designed this program because I wanted ladies to be able to arrive, as I said, and have a great time. But I thought if we pulled all of that together, everything we taught them, and then they raced to Queenscilff, then they would be able to get to a beautiful place. They will have put all of the things they'd learned together, and they could look back proudly on that day. And we were going to be turning these people who are passengers into participants. And so we launched the program through the SheSails network, and in the space of 2 or 3 weeks, we had 25 women signed up. It attracted more than I thought it would, or different ages, different experience, different backgrounds. But we pulled ladies in from 11 different clubs around the bay. And clearly this was something everyone was looking for. Some of it, felt the fear and did it anyway. Others were just curious about learning new skills. And others were hungry to stand up and be counted at their club. They were all keen. We gave them one of these polo shirts and a yellow beanie, so they'd stand.
I have to say, I do love the beanie.
Well, if they fell in, we'd find them. So, and it was really lovely, on the day, just looking around, and there's just this sea of yellow beanies, and we formed a tribe. We formed a KISS tribe.
Yeah, which is absolutely amazing. So the program, I believe you learn how to use the radio, you learn how to helm, yep. You learn, it sounds like you learn how to, there you go, you learn the sea survival. So yeah, tell us about the nuts and bolts of the program.
Well, the sea survival, we learned how to use the radio, as you said. We learned how to we put girls on the helm Some of the girls were racers and they'd never helmed before. We taught them, you've got to keep a safe watch. And we taught them personal preparation. So the beanie, the wet weather gear, this is all the stuff you're going to need, the PFD. These girls here, they were really, really keen to get going, and they had formed a really strong network, and they were able to take to the water with great confidence. We taught them about weather and tides. This is what they were vying for, some fabulous trophies. So there was a girl on the helm, a girl, a navigator, and a radio operator. And
fantastic. Wonderful. So I can get really good in one of those if that's the skill that I want to learn.
Boat handling skills, and passage preparation. So as you can see, it was very, very comprehensive.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's one of our
some more awards.
Yes, that's the winner of our helm. And there's a mentor sitting there watching his study going along. They learned how to identify navigation marks, and they learned radio protocols and had to, be well-mannered on the radio. And
I love, Lee, I love that you've included that component as well, because I know that we're often fearful of using the radio in case we get it wrong. Yes. So, there's so many things in sailing where you're like, oh, I won't go there just in case I get it wrong because everyone's listening, everybody's watching. You've got rid of all of that fear with the KISS program.
Yeah. And the other thing we did, Wendy, is we produced this logbook that they had to fill in on the day. It's got a few little cheat bits in the back of it.
Oh, wonderful.
And we had a little cheat sheet that they, okay, so what's the starting signal? And they have a look at that. So it was very, very, comprehensive. And what we were trying to overcome was, as you say, all of those fears.
Now, there was a beautiful photograph of a sunset there. May we pop back to that? I'm curious. Where's that?
That is actually Queenscilff, and that's where the girls were racing to. That is the view from the bar where they opened some bubbles at the end of the day and celebrated everything that they'd learnt.
But like a good keelboater should.
I think so, yes.
Oh, Lee, thank you so much. And thank you for a couple of things, if I may. One, for sharing the story, because it is absolutely inspirational to watch stories where you've actually made a difference in women's lives like that. And thank you for giving women the opportunity they wouldn't have had in their area without you doing that. It changes lives. It allows people at all women of all ages to participate. So thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
It's been wonderful. And I think there's a bit of an award sitting on your right-hand side. What's that?
That's the SheSails Award for Victoria.
Yeah, and well deserved.
Thank you.
Lee,
thanks.
Thank you so much for your time. It has been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you to all involved.
Well, now we get to pick up the pace, and we're certainly increasing the knots with the SailGP. Before I introduce our next speaker, the Q&A is live for this one. So my apologies, we can only take a couple of questions, only because of time, but please throw your question in there as you listen to Nina Curtis, and we will we'll make as much time as available to answer your questions. So our final speaker is an Olympian and a trailblazer. Nina Curtis has been sailing since she was able to walk. So literally as a toddler. She began racing at the age of 8, and by 15, she was competing in the Australian national sailing team. In 2009, Nina claimed her first world title at the Women's Match Racing World Championships. She's probably best known, though, at the age of 24, she and her young teammates earned themselves a silver medal at the Elliott 6-metre match racing event in London at the 2012 Olympic Games. She's been named Australian Female Sailor of the Year twice. Nina, I'm so excited that we have you here to discuss your competitive adventures. I know that you've been competing around the world with SailGP last month, so we are so pleased to have you back in Australia. Let's see Nina in action. Okay, we're not going to see Nina in action, and that's okay. So I will go to some questions, if that's okay. You obviously love speed. Your journey is one of adventure, hard work, dedication. Why? Why do you do what you do?
Oh, first of all, thank you so much for having me here today. I've just had the best evening listening to all the stories and adventures, and it's I'm pretty proud to be here this evening. So thank you very much for having me. In terms of why I do this, I am completely obsessed with sailing. Anyone who knows me knows that it kind of is just all I can think about. I'm a little bit obsessed about it, and it just brings me joy every single day. I grew up, I had a grandparent on either side of my family that were really passionate sailors, not at all competitive, but just loved being out on the water. And both my mom and my dad really passionate sailors, but also like quite competitive racers. And me and my brother both landed in the sailing industry. So it's in the blood. And I mean, I don't know why, like how you couldn't like it. Every day's different. You get to be out in nature and outdoors. And it's also a humbling sport as well. Like I've spent my entire life racing, it feels like, and you can never be a master. Every day, you know, nature or a boat or someone will teach you a lesson. And I love how it's that kind of sport where you're always learning, and that's it for me.
Actually, that is so true. And I love that you're teaching hubby. I do. I think that's absolutely terrific. Does he like speed as well?
Yeah, he likes speed. I'm teaching him how to sail on a Hobie 16, which is quite fun. He's very lanky and sometimes not the most obedient crew I've ever had, but you know, it's good fun.
Wonderful, wonderful. I look at the dates of your sailing. You've been sailing for over 20 years competitively. So you would have had a lot of support, a lot of opportunities along that way. I'd love to hear what opportunities came your way and how did you grab them?
Yeah, I often say that I've been in the right place at the right time for a lot of my sailing career, and you know, that's the case, but I also have worked really hard at everything I've kind of landed in, and very good at surrendering everything I've got at the time to give an opportunity everything I've got. You know, you said a pretty good wrap up of my achievements, but starting in match racing, or obviously in dinghies first, but landing in match racing at about the age of 15, where I was still competing in youth and mixed match racing events, was a really cool opportunity for me to continue that. We've spoken about it as youth sailors, that there is no difference between your male and female teammates or competitors. And it kind of stretched that out for me a little bit as a teenager in that match racing mixed arena. Sure, we're a little bit smaller and probably a little bit less strong on those small keel boats, but if you had good timing and some good communication skills, you could still make those mixed teams and you know, make a real go of it. That obviously led me into the Olympics with the match racing, and my experience there was, you know, there's no better platform in terms of equity in that Olympic pathway. You know, we're really getting very, very well, as it was said tonight, we will be equal. And while I was going through, I certainly didn't feel any gender biases, and so that was a really nice place to kind of land after my match racing experience. After winning the silver medal, I wanted to do another Olympic campaign, but for me, match racing didn't go ahead for the next Olympic Games. And so I had to learn to walk again, which I loved. It's been a definite theme of my sailing career, starting from the bottom frequently. But I went into 49er FX sailing and the NACRA 17 class. I juggled 2 classes in my first season and landed in the NACRA. And what was so cool about the NACRA was that it was mixed, the first mixed class, other than the Tornado earlier, but a really exciting opportunity to, again, kind of be on that forefront of the change. And it was a really cool class to be a part of. And again, the fleet kind of drew on a really broad group of experience from, you know, old-timer Tornado sailors and some youth coming through that all they've sailed was multi-hulls, and a few battlers like myself being thrown in the deep end and learning how to sail catamarans at a bit of a later stage. So, you know, definitely, you know, on the forefront in that space, and that was a really cool opportunity. Following, I got a bit burnt out from Olympic sailing after missing out on the Rio Olympics. I did one more season going towards Tokyo, but for me, I'd kind of done my dash and needed to mix it up a little bit. And I got an exciting opportunity to join the Volvo Ocean Race halfway through. So I joined Team Brunel in Auckland, and that was just yet another opportunity. You know, the Magenta team had done such incredible work the season before, you know, with their all-female team, and these women were my absolute idols, and watching them and their super steep learning curve as they raced around the world was just like kind of blew my small mind open. And when I got that opportunity to jump on a mixed team, I jumped in probably a little bit too freely. I had 2 Sydney to Hobarts to my name, no ocean racing experience really to speak of. And I jumped into the Southern Ocean leg, having no idea what I was getting myself into.
Wonderful.
I also, just like Jess, saw Point Nemo, and that was a pretty, makes you feel pretty small, and in and around Cape Horn.
Doesn't
and
it?
yeah, it was a baptism of fire. But again, you know, on a team full of guys that had never really sailed with girls. And that was kind of a cool experience, watching them figure it out as they went along. And they're like, oh, yeah, okay, you really want to win too. Oh, okay, you're giving this your everything. Oh, yeah, well, turns out we're pretty similar. And watching them go through this process was, I've watched it happen so often, you know, where just slowly with these opportunities, being able to flex the ability that we have when given the experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
SailGP's been that final part for
yeah,
me.
I watched that SailGP, Nina, and I'm in awe of that. So yet, let's talk about foiling. My grief.
Yeah, you know, coming out of match racing, I think I used to say I give my left hand to be able to go into the America's Cup. I was completely obsessed with America's Cup racing. My brother was working for America's Cup teams as a rigger, and I wanted it so much, and I just kept coming up to dead ends. And it was the same again when SailGP for the initial season. I heard that Australia had a team, and I heard that Tom Slingsby was going to be the skipper, and I sent him a very excited email. I'm like, I really want to be a part of your team. Will you give me a trial? Because I knew him from London 2012. We were on the same Australian team together. And he's like, Ians, I'm just really sorry. There's no space on this boat for a 60-kilo human, regardless of gender. Unfortunately, it's got to be, we're looking at 90-kilo humans. And, you know, like, you can't argue with that. But the sport had no space for humans, not 90 kilos. And I don't know, like, that certainly ruled me out. There's not a hope in hell I could get up to that weight and be, you know, be able to move athletically. So it was out for me. But, you know, I'm so grateful for this women's pathway. And, you know, it's flawed and it has its issues and it's happening slowly. But what's so cool is that we're learning and we're there and it's happening. We're putting one foot in front of the other, and it's really exciting.
Oh, isn't it just? I am so looking forward to seeing what that future shows itself and the opportunities. I listened to your story, and it's and you achieve such greatness, and then you find yourself, as you say, going back to basics again, and then coming back up and learning again. And that really intrigues me. That takes a certain kind of character to do that. Tell me your secret. What did you have to put in to get that out? You know, you kept bouncing back.
There's something very rewarding about being on that super steep trajectory of the learning curve. I think I might be a little bit addicted to that. I love it. It's incredibly rewarding to be learning and improving really quickly. I mean, so there's that. I'm definitely not afraid to jump back in and be a beginner. And I mean, in sailing, that's so cool. You can become such a diverse sailor because there's so much to learn, even in your specialty niche of sailing. And then it's so cool how available sailing is in so many different ways and scopes. And so that's quite cool. I think the thing that's served me best has absolutely been that I'm not afraid to fail. I love making mistakes. There's never a better lesson learned than absolutely having one, picking yourself up, dusting yourself off, and not making that mistake again. You know, I think that having a thick skin can serve you so well. You know, not attaching your self-worth to how you perform on the water on a single day. Can just really make for a much more pleasant experience as well if you're really on the hunt to become better and improve. The other thing is just to say yes. Like, you don't know what you're going to learn, what the weather's going to serve up to you, who you're going to meet, what opportunity it could lead to. Like, I've said yes sometimes, you know, to the most absurd, you know, situations and come away with so much. And yeah, it just comes back to how unique sailing is again. You can never stop learning, so never stop saying yes.
Oh, I love that. I listened to your response, and it's all the growth mindset, isn't it? It's all give it a go, say yes, don't be afraid of failing. And if you employ really hard work, you can achieve with a bit of fast learning and thick skin in there. And I believe you're a bit of a geek as well, am I right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's you know, sailing, you've got to use your brain, and I kind of dig that as well. And SailGP is pretty unreal. It's really let me flex my inner geek. You know, we are able to access you know, hundreds of data points from any chosen boat. So for instance, if you see a team do a beautiful tack, but you're not quite sure how they're doing it, you can rifle through all of their data, their turn rate, their, you know, boat speed going in, going out, and you can watch video of them and then hear their communication cues. Like, you can do the best deep dive, and having all of this available and the ability to learn in that is so cool. And for a sport that's so grey and there's so many variables, it's actually really cool to have data points. And, you know, it's like when you finally put that GoPro on the back of the boat and everything becomes a little bit more clear.
Doesn't it just? Fantastic. I'm going to ask one more question, if I may, and then we'll open up to the floor because we've got some great questions coming through. I found over the years that there's things that I love doing on the boat, and there's things that cause me to be, you know, I'm catching my breath, like, and I'm really focused. So docking is the one for me, bringing the boat alongside, knowing so many people are watching it. What's yours? What's the thing that causes you to go focus?
I'm absolutely no pro at docking, so that would certainly get my heart rate up as well. Like, I think I've spent my entire career being a crew, and I'm obsessed with sail trim. I just love trimming sails. It brings me so much joy. I really do love it. And I think perhaps like something that really hones my attention is if I'm steering and the trim's not right, I can't really focus on steering or anything else unless I've been able to have a tinker with the sails. So I think that perhaps that's where I get some secret hyper focus from, is when I get to look at and trim sails.
Yeah, oh, wonderful. I love that. So, you know, I know that sail trimming's your thing, and helming. Tell me about helming. So do you love helming, or is that a challenge for you?
I do love helming. I haven't actually for a very long time, but I did do a Hobie Worlds actually with hubby, who, you know, we were learning to sail on the run at the World Championships, which was quite fun. And I'm really impulsive. Like, I'm a much more calculated crew than I am a skipper. And yeah, I do tend to make sometimes some bad choices because I get a little bit excited and throw it in there. But more recently, I've been trying to master the moth class, which has been a real challenge of both my boat upkeep skills and carbon fiber repair skills as much as it has my sailing skills. And the moth is actually teaching me patience at a rapid rate. So yeah, hopefully I can learn some hard lessons about my impulsiveness on the helm.
So you've sailed so many boats, and we've had a question come through the audience, which I love, which is, you've sailed all of these. What's the favourite of all of your boats? So even, you know, go back to 8 years of age. What's your favourite boat?
I sail an F50 at the moment. There's no doubt, like, there's no comparison. That boat is like a spaceship. It goes like 99 kilometres an hour. It's outrageous. However, the Elliott 6 has the sweetest spot in my heart, the little 6-metre keel boat that we did all of our match racing training on. And for me, it's such a beautifully balanced boat. You can get it on a wave in a bit of swell. And yeah, I just love how hard it turns and how well you can match race those boats. And I you know, I'm a bit sad that there's no more match racing in the Olympics. I thought that was such a cool battle and so transferable for my non-sailing friends to really understand what I was doing as well. So yeah, maybe the F50 is there, but the Elliott 6 actually has a real close spot in my heart.
Wonderful. Now I've got an interesting question for you. Congrats on being part of SailGP. So good to see women on boats. What needs to happen, in your view, to see a woman at the helm?
Oh, I'm very passionate about this. So brilliant question, whoever called that in. What we need, regardless of the position, I think that's irrelevant. Let's talk race positions. So helm, flight controller, or wing trim. And what really needs to happen at the moment is we need training time. And unfortunately, you know, SailGP is progressing at a really rapid rate. We're getting more teams, we're getting more events, but the cost of that has been that our training time's actually been really heavily reduced. So we're kind of showing up now the day before 2 training days maximum, if not 1. And so that's not even enough time for Team Australia. One of, you know, that we're performing really well. We're at the top of the leaderboard. We're stressed to get, you know, our skills dialed in time. And that's before I've had a chance of getting, you know, my allocated time in my race position, which I'm going for wing trim. We've got a really cool squad now. There's 3 of us with Tash Bryant and Lucy Copeland. And Tash, you know, is really hunting for that helm role. I'm hunting for the wing trim, and I hear that Lucy's an absolute gun on that flight control. So what's cool about Team Australia is that we've got all 3 of the bases covered, and we're really well prepared and doing everything we can within the construct of SailGP at the moment to progress our female team as quickly as possible. We need more time, but I also feel like we could bypass all of this if we could just find a quick $20 million, and then we can have a United Nations team. We can forget the boys altogether, and we'll be able to buy the training time, get the boat, and everything would be solved. So if anyone knows anyone, get in contact to find me. But that would also
just a quick 20 mil and we'll be fine. Isn't that right?
Easy, right?
Beautiful. Okay, you ready for your next question? What advice would you have for male sailors welcoming female sailors the first time onto their yachts?
Oh, brilliant.
These are great questions.
When I'm sailing boats and I have new people on board, regardless of skill set, I think what goes a long way, regardless of gender, is really explaining simple things like what the ropes are attached to. You know, follow the rope through and what is it attached to, and how's that going to impact perhaps how a winch works if we're talking keel boats and the load, and having it's all about that practice failure all over again, and
Absolutely.
you know, giving humans a chance to understand the craft that they're using, what equipment they're working with, and you know, even scaling it back a little bit about sailing and what to expect. I really feel like so often we throw newcomers in the deep end and love to watch have a bit of a scramble and have a bit of a yell, but I don't know, I get a real kick out of you know, educating people to sailing's so cool, like what the rope's attached to, how it's harnessing the sail. Can you imagine the wind coming through the sail like this? Like it's so cool, and taking that time to explain to people, whatever their level, what you expect from them, you know, in that next step. But I think in terms of females, it's talk to us and treat us like humans. I think the only thing we might be up against is a little bit of strength, but that can always be solved, I think, with more girl power or a few extra hands or a good timing, you know.
Yeah, look, totally with you on all of that. Absolutely. There is nothing more joyful than actually teaching somebody. And I take my hat off to all of our instructors around New Zealand and in Australia. Amazing roles that they play in releasing people's, you know, inner joy, as you say. It's joyful to sail, and therefore, you know, if you're taught how to do it well and in a really safe environment. So, yeah, I love your answer. Thank you. One quick question, and then we get to play the video. And this one's an interesting one because this speaks to sort of on the ground for us, which is how can clubs better support female sailors? So a really big open question for you.
Yeah, that's a great one. I don't know. Turn to the girls that we were listening to this afternoon, the three young girls. Like, I was so inspired by, you know, how they've tackled it's so obvious and clear with, you know, the things that they've been using, and I found that really interesting. I got asked this question quite recently, and I think, you know, when we all start out in dinghies and kids, we're kind of under our parents' guidance or under some level of support, where, you know, we've either driven it as kids ourselves, or perhaps our parents have driven it, but there is a facilitator to help get us into sailing, perhaps as young people. But I think that where I watched a lot of my female teammates or competitors drop out was at that like mid to late high school, coming into university. And I think we see like high level dropouts of in sport at that age, regardless of gender. But I do think it's a little bit more severe for the females. And I kind of came across that myself, where I was like, well, I want to be a professional sailor. And then you open your eyes and look around, and there wasn't, it didn't really exist. And, you know, I've been lucky enough now to have been paid for sailing, and we're making really good inroads with that. But in terms of my opportunities to generate income compared to my teammates on the SailGP boat, it's a really big gap still. It's coming, it's closing, and we're upskilling and we're fighting against the problem. But I think, you know, if there's those opportunities, I quite like the ability of tackling this like from grassroots and from top down, and letting it meet in the middle. So the young kids that are being like fired up in the grassroots program have something to look up to, and have something to be like, oh, maybe I could be a professional sailor, or I could be a coach, or this, you know, I could sail around the world, and so forth. And the more, you know, carrots you can dangle in sport like that, where the more opportunities we can create, I think will really like support those kids with stars in their eyes to not drop out and then have to pick it up you know, in adulthood when we get the means and the time back.
Yeah, I totally understand that. Let's just go quickly to our video because I think it speaks very much to what you've just been talking about.
Hi, I'm here with some of our awesome Inspire female athletes here today, and we're having a bit of a chat and hopefully getting to go climb on the boat, and it's going to be a great morning. 3/4 of the way through the year, we're on board racing with the teams in Cadiz. And I'm on a hot streak because I jumped on in Cadiz and then did Sydney and also the final in San Francisco. I'm currently undefeated, so I feel like I'm a bit of a badass. I've got a hot streak, but the pressure's really on for this event, you know, because the guys are sailing so well. I grew up in Sydney in Australia, and I went through, I guess, a pretty conventional dinghy pathway for my area, but they're probably boats that you wouldn't even recognise because they're quite niche for Australia. But it was the Manly Junior, then the Flying 11, and then I did a little bit of time in the 29er as well.
Most exciting thing that we learned is that there are so many more opportunities than I thought there were, and she's just so inspiring to us.
I learned from Nina that as long as you're driven and dedicated and have the energy to do something, any woman can be a part of something like this and be on these boats.
Nina, thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute delight talking to you. All the best for whatever the future is, and we'll watch you with great interest. So thank you for your time. That brings us to the end of our conference, and we're back safely in port. Thank you all to all the speakers. It has been just incredible hearing the stories from literally around our shores and over in New Zealand. And thank you to the organisers for making tonight so special. Corinda, Sue from Australian Sailing, this would not have been possible without you. So thank you for all the efforts that you put in under the SheSails program. To learn more about SheSails, I think you probably all popped up onto the website. You would have done that to register. And so for clubs online tonight, please, there are some wonderful resources available to you. So please, keep jumping into the website and seeing what's being offered. If you happen to be in New South Wales or Victoria, there is a discount for instructor courses. So 50% off discount on for women and girls until December 2023. So you've got a whole year, make the most of it. And if you want to enroll, just give Australian Sailing State Office a call and they'll tell you what club and how you can make that happen. There's a recording of our conference tonight on the She Learns section of the website, which has also got some great workshop and webinar videos. So please keep up to date with all of that. And as you probably already do, jump on the Facebook page for SheSails. That's a really active site. Lastly, we go back to the beginning of our conference where we mentioned what Australian Sailing was doing around inclusivity and particularly around diversity. We've got a webinar planned for later on this year. So I'm lucky to team up with Alison Merridew from Tasmania, a passionate advocate for gender equity. So in the workshop, we give some support to clubs on how they can build that positive, inclusive culture that we've been listening all about this whole conference. We talk about how you tackle unconscious bias and many more things. So please have a look out for that. Details will be on the SheSails social, the website. So we encourage Commodores to jump in and the committees as well. Once again, thank you for attending and making this 2022 SheSails Steering the Course Conference such a memorable time together. Be safe on the water, please. Have fun and grab the challenge of steering your own course. So this is me, Wendy Hall, logging off, and thank you for your coverage.
dearly beloved. If this love only exists in my dreams,